Bogota, Colombia. A man named Fabio is speaking to Don Luis, a drug lord and his boss. Fabio tells him he is quitting and handing over all the bookkeeping on the cartel to another associate. Don Luis smiles and says he will miss him, and they toast Fabio's life. Fabio leaves, and Don Luis motions to his right-hand man to kill him. Fabio takes 3 guards loyal to him and races home, knowing they have only an hour to leave the country. Fabio gets home and tells his wife, Alicia, that it's time. He tells his young daughter, Cataleya, that in case something happens, she should go to the American embassy and give them a microchip that has all the information on Don Luis's illegal activities. Minutes later, Marco and numerous cartel members show up and slaughter Fabio's men. Fabio and Alicia grab guns and try to hold the men off, but are killed off-screen. Cataleya sits at the table in shock and listens to the gunfire. Marco and the men come up to Cataleya. Marco pretends to be friendly, saying he was a friend of her father, but Fabio took something from Don Luis. Marco asks if she knows where it is. Cataleya leans in close, grabs a knife placed under the table, and stabs him in the hand. Cataleya scoots through a window and onto a ledge. She runs off to escape while Marco's cartel goons give chase. Despite having Parker runners, men on motorcycles, and in cars, Cataleya eludes them by escaping into the sewers. She opens a manhole cover and heads to the US Embassy, where she is sent to an agent who asks about her father. Cataleya says he is dead. The man asks if her dad had something, and Cataleya forces herself to throw up and gives him the microchip. It has the records of all Don Luis's activities. In exchange for the chip, they get her out of the country. An American CIA agent escorts her to Miami. Cataleya asks to go to the bathroom and escapes through the window. She gets a bus ticket to Chicago, where her father told her to go. She heads for a seedy neighborhood and asks for Emilio. Emilio is Fabio's brother and her uncle. When Emilio sees her, he is overcome and hugs her. Cataleya is finally able to let go and cries in her uncle's arms. The next morning, she wakes up in her uncle's apartment and comes down to breakfast. Her grandmother is there, who makes her breakfast. The next day, Emilio takes her to a private prep school and bribes the principal to accept her in the middle of the school year. As they leave, Cataleya is mad because she thinks she can learn nothing at school. She needs to learn how to be an assassin. Emilio suddenly pulls out a revolver and shoots at a person driving a car, causing it to crash. He tells her that hired killers are a dime a dozen. He could teach her, and she'd be dead in 5 years. If she wants to do this and be smart, she needs to go to school. Cut to the present day. 2 cops are sitting in their car, talking about their wives, when they are smashed into by a drunk driver. A woman comes out incoherently babbling. They quickly arrest her. It is Cataleya, all grown up. They take her to the police station and thrown into a cell for the night. US Marshals show up that night with a prisoner. They take him to his cell. Cataleya wakes up. She changes her clothes into a skin-tight black suit and picks the lock. She grabs a spoon that was in a cup of coffee at her cell. She swivels the cameras away so she is not seen, grabs some water from the cooler, and heads to the electrical room. She rigs the cup and the spoon to cause a spark and heads into the air ducts. Cataleya gets through a now-stopped fan just before the power is reset. She drops into the men's restroom. The cop guarding the prisoner notices he has no coffee and leaves the room. He goes into the bathroom and is knocked out by Cataleya. She opens the cell and hits the prisoner awake. She tells him to undo his shirt. He asks why, and she shoots him several times. The marshals hear the gunshots and run to the cell to see the waking guard with a gun in his hand. The marshals search the entire building, and Cataleya goes up to the roof to elude them. When the coast is clear, she heads back through the air ducts, finds her cell, locks the door, and changes back into her clothes. By the time the marshals find her, she is laying back down, pretending to sleep again. Cataleya is released the next day after being fingerprinted. She leaves the jail and pulls at her hand. She was wearing fake latex skin that replicated another person's prints. She heads to the apartment of Danny, a painter and her quasi-boyfriend. Danny knows little about her and only knows her as Jennifer. Danny and Cataleya have sex, and she leaves the next morning without saying goodbye. FBI Special Agent Ross comes to the jail and realizes the victim is the latest of a string of murders they have been tracking for the past 4 years. CIA Agent Richard travels to New Orleans to a heavily guarded villa. It is the home of Don Luis, who was not prosecuted for his crimes. Richard shows him the hit from the jail cells, but Luis denies he had anything to do with it. After Richard leaves, Luis tells Marco to handle the situation. Ross holds a meeting about the tag killer and their numerous victims. He concludes that one of the people in the jail killed the target, and they need to find out who. Ross also says they need to release the information about the case. Meanwhile, Cataleya goes to see Emilio and hands her the next job. A hedge manager created a Ponzi scheme, stole billions, and fled the country. People want him dead. Cataleya goes into a safe, pulls out her fake passports, and finds one for Mexico. In Mexico, we find ourselves in the mansion of the hedge manager, who lives in opulence. The hedge fund manager tells his security he wants extra men tonight. Cataleya swims through the aquarium, the sharks ignoring her, and pushes up a glass cover to enter the mansion. She pulls out a pistol and silencer. The hedge fund manager gets up and notices Cataleya wrote on him, "Thief," in the flower design. He walks around his mansion and notices all his guards are dead. He picks up 2 guns and heads into the pool area. Cataleya is sitting in a chair and makes her presence known. He tries to shoot her, but his guns are empty. Cataleya shoots him in the legs. The man pleads with her not to kill him, but Cataleya shoots him in the chest, and he falls into the open pool. The blood flows, and the sharks eat him alive in seconds. Back in the USA, Cataleya goes to Danny's apartment. She sleeps on his bed and holds his shirt close. It is clear she cares about him, but she is afraid to show it. Meanwhile, Ross is looking at the tag killer's calling card when the mailman gives him a vital clue. It is the Cataleya flower that only grows in Colombia. Ross tries to tie it to open cases in Colombia, but is denied access due to it falling under CIA jurisdiction. Ross calls Richard and asks for clearance, but Richard dodges the issue. He calls Lewis and tells him to handle the problem before Agent Ross starts to connect the dots. Lewis sends Marco to track Cataleya down and interrogate every Colombian until it leads to her family. It is now midday. Danny takes a quick photo of Cataleya sleeping. He wakes her up with breakfast food and tells her they can eat it for lunch. Cataleya freaks out and says she did too much and has to leave. Danny is flustered, wondering what he did wrong. Cataleya meets with Emilio. People are looking for them, showing that 8 people were gunned down in a bar, one being a friend of Emilio. "You're retired," Emilio tells her. Cataleya refuses to quit, but Emilio says it is not just about her. It's about the family she has left. She is putting them in danger. Emilio leaves her with a picture of her parents, a reminder of what can be lost. Cataleya sits and cries. Cataleya goes to church with Emilio and her grandmother. She seems ready to give up her quest for revenge. Danny is at a coffee shop talking about his girlfriend Jennifer to a buddy, saying he is falling for her but knows nothing about her. The buddy sees the photo and is shocked at how hot she is. Danny is distracted by his car being ticketed, so his friend takes the phone with the photo and calls his sister-in-law, who works at a police station. He asks her to check on Jennifer to make sure she is legit so Danny won't be hurt. Ross is at his computer when it is pinged with Cataleya's photo. He traces the signal to the other police station and has the technician arrested as they track the signal further. Ross compares the photo to the security footage at the jail, and it's a match. Cataleya goes home and calls Danny, trying to articulate how she feels about him. Danny mentions the photo, and she freaks, asking who else saw it. As Cataleya checks the perimeter of her apartment, SWAT is there to arrest her. She turns on the shower and climbs into a duct to escape out of her apartment. She runs through several apartments and enters one. The tenant tries to make a fuss, so she knocks him out. She recovers a harness and a sniper rifle in the man's bathroom, which she had previously planted there. She plants explosives on the wall as Ross and his agents blow the door to her apartment. She uses the harness to slide down the pipes to the garage. She shoots out the cameras and slides into another air duct before SWAT finds her. She ends up in the subway and sneaks away. Cataleya heads to Emilio's but finds the place ransacked. She finds her grandmother dead in the kitchen, making her break down. She looks for Emilio and finds him tied to a chair, dead. It is clear he was tortured. Cataleya tells him she's sorry and screams in a combination of sadness and anger. Ross comes home, and Cataleya is there waiting with a gun. She motions for him to sit. She reveals that she has rigged his chair with a pressure-sensitive explosive, so he shouldn't try anything funny. Cataleya tells him she is the one he has been looking for. Cataleya tells Ross he better get the information about Don Lewis from the CIA, or she will kill a family member once a week until he is as hollow as she felt all those years ago. Ross goes to Richard and tells him the situation. Richard will not give up the info. Ross gets a call. It's Cataleya, who tells him either Richard gives her the address, or he will die. Richard scoffs since his windows are reinforced glass. Cataleya shoots off a round with her sniper rifle, breaking through the glass. Richard gives him the address. Ross asks about his family, but Cataleya hangs up. Cataleya goes to Pepe's garage. She grabs some guns and sees the 2 dogs. She grabs the armored truck and drives off to Don Luis's location. At Don Luis's mansion, Marco is directing the men about what they face with Cataleya. Luis hears something. It is a rocket that is coming their way. Luis barely gets out of the way as it blows up the room. Marco pulls him up, and they try to get him out of there. 4 of the men get into a car to start a convoy. Cataleya busts through with her truck, crushing the car. She gets out and peppers the car with bullets, killing the men. Marco places Luis in a safe room while he tries to kill Cataleya. After a few brief shootouts, it is just Marco with 1 other man. Cataleya kills the man, then faces Marco with her gun. They begin to fight hand to hand, alternately disarming each other. After a while, Marco grabs the gun and goes to fire, but Cataleya ejects the clip and rips the slide off the gun, stabbing him in the neck and killing him. Luis, realizing all his men are dead, but that Cataleya doesn't know where he is, leaves the panic room and takes one of his vans. He receives a call from Marco's cell. It is Cataleya. Luis tells her that she will never kill him. Cataleya says, "Actually, I have you exactly where I want you." Luis looks back and sees Cataleya's 2 dogs. They tear Don Luis apart, making her revenge complete. Danny was taken into custody by Ross and the FBI. Danny knows little and tells them so. Ross says while he is not under arrest, he still has questions to answer. Danny asks for coffee, and Ross goes to get it. Danny gets a call from Cataleya. She tells him she's okay, and they have 40 seconds before they trace the call, so that's enough time to ask 3 questions. He asks for her real name, and she tells him it's Cataleya. Danny asks if his little bird will return one day, meaning her. Cataleya tells him that maybe one day she can. An agent tells Ross that Danny is getting a call from Cataleya, and they rush back in. Ross orders him to give over the phone, but Cataleya hangs up before he can get anything from her. Ross stares at the phone and tells Danny he's free to go. Cataleya puts her sunglasses on and gets on a bus for a destination unknown.